So we've got Cinderella's question, which is: can you elaborate from a historical context why the EU is seen as such a bad thing from some people's perspective? It seems they do not understand it's also a peace project. So do you want to start this one?
Yeah, I'll jump straight into it. So, um, it's hard to kind of see, I guess, from quite a biased point of view with us. Obviously, we're quite pro EU. We know it has its faults, but yeah, it's quite weird because he mentions, well, he or she, sorry, Cinemarella, mentions it started off as a peace project and to create that unity in Europe, so we don't see, you know, repeats of the 20th century and the horrendous wars and conflicts and everything that unfortunately that entailed. So I guess the thing to start with that Madge and I spoke about was foreigners being very Brexit, foreigners
Foreigners, bloody foreigners, coming here. There's a classic
stealing our
skit from
jobs.
that comedian. I can't remember his name, but I don't know if you've seen it, Alice. But it's like bloody foreigners coming here, teaching us how to sew, etc. It's pretty funny. It makes me laugh every time.
No, it's a good. I think I've seen the skit, but
Yeah.
yeah, what we were speaking about not too long ago about the idea that people don't really understand immigration, and it was very much a take control of our borders when that control was never gone. We never didn't have that. We always had that control. It was very easy to control the borders and you know skilled workers from abroad contribute horrendous amounts of money to the economy. It's fantastic how much they contribute. You know, and I think a lot of people don't realise that that contribution, should it be absent, would dent the British economy so much. And I think a lot of people just choose to, be ignorant to that fact that, there are people from overseas who can improve the economy, can improve our circumstances, when instead it's coming here, stealing houses, jobs, benefits, the classic kind of and xenophobic rhetoric that they spout so much. So yeah, just that failure to kind of comprehend that we need an influx of foreign workers in, you know, every department. The NHS wouldn't survive without foreign workers, for example. So we need those people to come in and actually contribute, which they do. So that's kind of one of the points, and we can kind of talk a bit more about that if you've got
Yeah, I
anything
mean,
to.
yeah. What I'd say is, we could have followed. I think, but the EU does have rules where if someone isn't actually working in that country, they can be told to leave. I think Belgium has that law where if you cannot sustain yourself economically or financially, excuse me, Belgium can get you to leave. So there is that. There was always that ability to do that, but Britain never took it because Tony Blair wanted a mass influx of people to come in to do the jobs that some British people weren't doing. Be it skilled or unskilled jobs. It's much easier. It's the classic in football, isn't it? Is yeah, you can promote from your youth academy, or you could get someone in who is already pretty good at that role. Be it NHS workers or anything in manufacturing, construction, etc. We put a massive emphasis on this country in academics when it should have been on vocational skills, really. And I think that's one of the reasons why. I don't know what you feel about this, Ellis. Is that we don't have a lot of people with skills in things like construction, electrics, plumbing, all that kind of stuff, because most kids are put on to do academic stuff rather than vocational stuff. I don't know how much you agree or disagree with that, Alice.
Oh no, I think that's a fantastic point, and I think you can even say, going back to you and I in school, there's so much pressure from, even when we chose our options at the end of year 8 going into year 9 at my school, and there is such a big amount of pressure from the school to choose triple sciences, history, geography, anything that involves academia. And the people who didn't want to do that and wanted to do, we did a construction course. It was almost like, here's all the great stuff you can do, and construction. Like, it's such a big, yeah, like you said, like a big push for academic study that, and I think from a school's point of view, they just want to go, oh, 99% of our students went to university and studied X, Y, and Z, where instead they should be going, well, X amount went to university, but X amount have gone into apprenticeships or immediate employment, anything like that. And yeah, stuff like, construction, like you said, plumbing, electricians, mechanics, is that people in the UK don't do those jobs because they basically get peer pressured by schools and institutions like that to do academic subjects. And it's quite sad to see that we've almost rejected the idea that you can be intelligent in a different field. And I always say, like, I have a few friends who are mechanics. I say our intelligence isn't comparable because my intelligence is in stuff like academic, with history. His intelligence is more mechanics. I couldn't fix a car in the same way that he couldn't write a dissertation on, uh, the Second World War. It's just something very vague. And we need to kind of go back a bit and say, well, actually, we do need these people to work in these industries. So we need to put that kind of offer back on the table because there are a lot of kids who struggle with your maths, your sciences, your histories, your English literatures and languages, and they need that outlet and those opportunities which they're not getting.
Yeah, one of my personal favourites is they keep saying, white boys are really struggling in school, and I'm like, well, are you going to invest more in the schools then and put more support for students? They're like, no, it's just bloody foreign kids are getting all this help, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and it's very much what white working class boys are struggling. Oh, okay, so you want to help them? No, we're just going to say that they're struggling. Like, oh, okay, why don't you do something about it?
So
Realize that these kids don't they sit in maths and they want to bang their head against the table because they don't get it. But you can also go, well, you're not very good at maths, but you might be good at this. Let's try you out on construction. Oh, you're really good at that. Okay, let's help you out. It's almost like oh, you're bad at English and maths and science. Oh, okay, well, the school's just going to kind of forget about you and focus on the kids who are going to do well in those subjects.
yeah, because they're so desperate to compete in that school league thing or whatever, especially when teachers have like classes of like 30 plus students, like you can't give the individual help that students need. Like it's ridiculous how big class sizes are now. So, you struggle to kind of get the expertise you need within the country, and therefore you definitely need foreign people to come in who actually have the skills your country needs. But then we get mad because there's not enough housing, your kid can't get a school place, you can't see a doctor, you can't get a hospital appointment, when all the answers really stem back to the Conservative government. Like, the main reason why David Cameron couldn't refute a lot of the arguments when it came to immigration, when it comes to housing and NHS problems, is because he helped create the problems. So how's he going to be like, oh, it's not the EU's problem, it's, oh wait, that's my fault? No, I can't be saying that. I'm not stupid. I'm not a complete idiot. He's kind of stupid. We're not going to talk about the green cell stuff here, but not very intelligent. But that's the main reason why we need foreign people to come in. But people in this country don't like foreigners. This, I say people, I mean, like, there's a large amount of people who don't like foreigners, and that's one of the things that pushed the Brexit train over the over the line, essentially, which is that the hatred of foreigners, the xenophobia of, yeah, we'll keep freedom of movement for us, but we'll get rid of it for other people. And that kind of freedom of movement being a key tenet within the EU is one of the reasons why people in the UK hate the EU, despite the fact that there are people, British people in Spain, that are angry that they need visas and stuff because freedom of movement is ended. And you're like, what did you expect was going to happen? Like, you're not special. Your red passport, or I guess now your blue passport, doesn't make you some sort of human being that can circumvent the rules. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and I think we'll come on to like that British entitlement a bit later on because we've got another question as well about that. I think what we've just kind of spoken about that lack of education is quite a good segue to the next thing we spoke about, which is just an absence of education in general on the European Union. People didn't know what the EU was, and you know, we did politics at A level, and we didn't do much on the European Union. Granted, ours was focused on British politics anyway, but the European Union is such a big part of British politics anyway that it should have been, I think, a bigger part of that. But we don't learn anything on the European Union. You don't, and people, was it people in like Cornwall or something who voted to leave and then realised that a lot of their fishing subsidiaries were going to get cut because they had no
Oh, it,
idea.
it
And
was it was so bad. They rely on EU subsidies, right? And now it's been cut by about 95%, and they're really angry about it. And I'm like, the British government, the Tories don't believe in subsidies. So what made you think you're going to be special when they don't even fund the NHS? They're going to let you keep the money that you've gotten. Like, no, like that's not what they believe ideologically.
yeah, and I think a lot of people just like people who voted to leave who benefited from the European Union basically went, oh well, we'll still get our bits, won't we? And the European Union's going to go, well, no, obviously not. Like, I think British people want to have the benefits of everything without being a part of
Yeah.
anything.
Uh,
They want that enjoyment of, oh well, I can have it, but I don't want to contribute to that.
I think they were just really naive in thinking, oh, right, our net contribution is, no, sorry, our gross contribution is about 350 million. The net contribution is about half of that. So we'll get half the money we get back anyways, but we'll get all of it back. And therefore we can use that money to fund other things. And I'm like, do you genuinely believe the Conservative government would actually do that? And then we realize, wait, that's not even going to happen because there's a massive divorce bill, which none of the Brexiteers and even some of the Remainers didn't actually talk about because it was Project Fear.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing with the European Union. In the UK, it was all Project Fear, and now it's actually happening. It's, oh well, you're spouting rubbish. Project Fear is still going on. Like, no, no, no. People are telling you the truth, and if you don't want to, there's such a big thing currently where people can't admit they've got it wrong. If people who actually went, oh, you know what, I actually voted for the wrong thing here. I'd like to push for some change. Maybe they want a better relationship with the EU or just to rejoin as a whole. But people have so much like ego and pride that we could be literally not being able to eat and drink, and people would go, well, it's better than being in the European Union, isn't it? And we see that with, I guess we'll kind of maybe mention it a bit later on, but you see that it's always well, it's bad with Boris, but we could have had it worse with Corbyn. Like, it's all that.
No.
It's always, it could have been worse with him. Like, no, just say you have an argument. Say you got it wrong.
Have you seen that guy who's like, I'm not going to get the vaccine to trigger the libs? And I'm like, I can't tell if this is parody or not, but it's really funny. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I
Oh
wouldn't be
my
surprised
god,
if
it's
it's real
so
at this
funny.
point.
He's like, I'm not going to have my vaccine to trigger the libs. And I'm like, mate, the only thing that's going to get triggered is your lungs when when your lungs get lit on fire by COVID. Absolute fraud. Yeah, I think there's another misconception that the EU just deals with trivial stuff like bendy bananas, which I never understood that because bananas are bent. Right? They're not straight, are they?
Well, yeah, I always thought that was quite an odd saying because they're curved, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but they are like. What I don't understand what her point was about bendy bananas and like how much meat do you need in a sausage? Like people do realize this stuff has to be regulated, right? Like someone has to say how much meat do you need in a sausage for it to be called a sausage. Like in America, they can't call certain things cheese; they call it cheese product because you need certain rules. Otherwise, you can call anything a sausage. Like when
Yeah,
it's not. Like it's ridiculous that people like come up with these are the issues and oh I'm tired of MEPs voting for this. Is like you do realize that someone has to vote for that sort of stuff, right? As trivial as it sounds, someone has to.
yeah, and I think like it. There's a show on YouTube called Food Wars, and they basically do like big restaurants in England or the UK and in America, and they compare like the calories, ingredients, and stuff, and you'll see like the American ingredients is just like pages and pages of just awful things. And there's so much more calories and salts, and it's so much worse. And I think, yeah, you do have to have those trivial things where the European Union goes, okay, well, we have to figure out what makes this product and what doesn't. And I think a lot of people, will go, oh, the chlorinated chicken, it won't be that bad. It's like, no, like American food product is horrendously bad in the same way that the healthcare is horrendously bad, but America can just push that on us because ultimately, and we'll come on to this later, Britain doesn't really have that much power. It's quite subservient to the US, and yeah, I think people just kind of got a bit lost with what the EU does as a whole, I guess, and quite
Yeah,
sad to see.
I think that brings on to failure to understand the EU Parliament and the voting system, which I'm not going to lie, I don't have tons of knowledge about, apart from the fact that they have, I think a proportional representation system. And, some of the stuff, I think the voting systems aren't the best when it comes to choosing commissioner. But at the same time, we have a system where you vote in the leader of a political party and they choose the cabinet and they pick, especially in the case of Boris Johnson, absolute morons to run governmental departments who have no experience in those fields. Like Liz Truss has no expertise in trade, yet she's our trade minister.
I
And
don't
so
think
on.
she has experience in anything at this rate. She's awful.
I mean, she does have experience in saying that we import way too much cheese and it's a disgrace, and apples and pears. And I'm like, what is your problem? Like, stop it. Like, we can't create, we don't have fruits throughout the whole year. We have to import stuff. Like, certain fruits don't grow in certain times of the year, Liz. Hate to break it to you. Try growing strawberries in the winter. It's not going to work.
Well, she's doing it in her garden, and she'll still be happy with her rubbish strawberries. She is
Yeah.
horrendous,
But
but
she can't grow
yeah,
strawberries, the fraud.
yeah. I think it's quite a complicated system, and like I visited the Parliament when I was in Belgium. It's really good. I definitely recommend going. But yeah, it's a very complicated system, and I guess it doesn't make it easier because obviously there are so many countries involved in the logistics of having representatives from all those countries, and et cetera, et cetera. And it is quite a hard system. But again, there's no education on how it works. But then I think not many people really know how UK politics works.
Yeah.
They go and cast their vote. I voted for Boris. No, you didn't. You voted for the member of parliament for your constituency. That's what you did. But I think like you said, yeah, like our system is horrendous as well. Like it's all, who's my mate? Who can I trust? Okay, you can be defence. Okay, you can be health. Okay, you can be chancellor. Just because you're my friend and I know you won't backstab me.
Yeah.
I guess there's that like disenfranchised nature that people don't really get the EU, how it works in the voting system, which I do get, and I kind of agree. There are some bits I'm a bit confused on as well, so it's hard to
Yeah.
kind of critique people for that.
But you can kind of learn it. I mean, I've watched YouTube videos on the past about it, and like sometimes you just forget, but like surely, the fact that what is the EU was trending a day after the referendum did startle me a bit. Like, did you guys do no research whatsoever? Probably. But yeah, I think that takes us on to protectionist cabal, which the EU is protectionist in itself. It doesn't like third countries selling goods to it. That's the reason why it has things like tariffs and quotas, etc. But the whole point of being protection is you protect your own industries, be it financial stuff, manufacturing or agriculture. And right now I've done, I think, a video went out today about how farmers are alarmed about a potential tariff-free deal with New Zealand and Australia. These farmers are going to be completely exposed because we're going to have mass imports from these countries which are going to decimate local farming. That's the reason why you need protectionism. So that's an argument, Rees-Mogg used constantly, protectionism, and that's bad because these farmers thought they were going to have access to the EU single market whilst also having access to other countries around the world, where all you've done is lost out to the access with the EU single market, and you have to now compete with many different countries all over the world.
Yeah, and I think there was that whole, British produce is the best produce. Like, well, I mean, I don't know the value. I don't know if it is, but if you're going, there's so many countries that are making that produce, and you think, well, they're probably going to get it cheaper and better somewhere else. Not to say our farmers aren't good farmers. I'm sure they're the best in the business. I don't know. I've never been on a farm, but yeah, it's that idea of, again, I always think it comes back to that entitlement of, no, the British is best. British manufacturing, British produce, British anything. It's the best, and we won't hear anything else. And it's like, no. Have some, have a reality check. It's not, and we need to accommodate for that. We need to accommodate the fact that there are local British farmers that are now thinking, I can't sell my produce, or, what's the point in me doing a harvest this year when I'm going to get nothing for it? It's just going to cost me money and time and effort when I could just, sell up, and they can put houses on my farm, and I can go get an office job.
And the other issue is that British farming, we do have higher standards than most other countries, but those higher standards do come at a cost. So even if we have the best product with reared well, free range, all this stuff, that costs more. And in a country which let's not get twisted now, some people in the UK are live in poverty. Some people live in extreme poverty, and some people are just about managing. If it's the case they can get cheaper Australian beef over more expensive but higher standard British beef, that's going to be tempting for a lot of people, and I'm not going to blame them for it. But if you can save some money in your weekly shop, why wouldn't you do it? So that's the other problem that a lot of farmers are going to have, especially if we start lowering standards for imports, which will likely happen to get a trade deal with countries like the US or maybe even Canada, for example. So yes, the EU is protectionist, but it protects the members, and we're not having that. We don't have that protection anymore. People like Liz Truss will happily sell the family silver for anything really. She doesn't care.
Yeah, and I think that's what people don't realize is like she doesn't care. Like that's the exact point. She doesn't care whether she's got being lobbied by British farmers who are going, oh, we can't sell our produce. She doesn't care at all because she's made her money off it. She's fine. She'll say, oh, this trade deal is the best trade deal in the history of forever, when in reality it's nothing. It'll contribute nothing to the economy and nothing to anyone. And we're going to get to that. We could well get to that point where the cost of British produce is too high, and even for someone like me who works a decently paid job, I would go, well, if I can save, a couple of quid here and a couple of quid there on non-UK produce, I'll have to do it, because at the end of the day, like that's the way the economy is. I'm gonna get a better price. I might sacrifice some quality, but at the end of the day, money is king. As horrible as
Yeah,
it is,
I need to eat. That's the way it is.
yeah, and I want to buy as much as I can for as little as I can. And whilst I would love to have more money and support local produce and local butchers, I just financially don't have that opportunity. And maybe one day I will, and I'd love to be able to go out there and go to a farm or a butcher's and actually get the proper local produce and support local economies. But for now, that chance is only for a very small amount of people, which we are not helping local people out by giving them the chance to sell their produce to other local people. We're just going, oh well, yeah, just get a mass shop, and yeah, you should buy British, and then let me buy British then, but I can't because you're not helping me.
Yeah, that kind of is more of the right wing, I think, perspective. Protection is a protectionist cabal. It's more of the Rees-Mogg type perspective.
Yeah.
If we talk about socialism in one country, what would you say about that? It's more of the left wing kind of argument. I think that's something more Corbyn would have spoken about. If you want to take that one.
Yeah, so I guess the idea of socialism in one country is obviously it's quite a Stalinist idea. Obviously, we're not going to get onto
We're not saying Corbyn is Stalinist. Let's be serious.
no,
Let's be real here. Yeah, I just want to make that
no.
point, just in case anyone's like, "Oh, you said Corbyn's like Stalin." Like, it's kind of, I think it's an idea of Stalin's, right?
Yes. I I've just got it up on Google actually because I couldn't remember the year it was. It was 1924, and adopted as state policy. So the idea was that the country would essentially focus on itself. That looking outside the country wasn't a bad thing. It was more the idea of you put your country first, and make it able to be self-sufficient. A focus on agriculture, which was going back to the Soviet, was a big part of the early Soviet Union. Was agriculture was basically king. But from a socialist point of view, it's all about building up the strength of socialism in that one country and not being outward looking, which is quite, I guess it's also quite a xenophobic idea. But it's not from, I'd say, a modern day socialist point of view. It's not the idea that we don't want to talk to other countries and we're not gonna look outwards. It's more the idea of, okay, well, this collective organization isn't beneficial to socialism when we have to be socialism first and then everything else comes second. And I know quite a lot of left-wing people were against the European Union, which makes sense when we look at socialism in one country, just because obviously socialism is not in power in the UK, so the focus is on keeping that one country where you can control it, whereas the European Union, you're liable to outside influence, which
Yeah.
is true to an extent with the European Union. You do have other countries that contribute, but yeah, socialism in one country is just all about focusing on the one country, kind of not having that vision to look at other countries and engage as much, where you can just be self-sufficient and focus on the political ideas, and everything else will come second as a result.
Yeah, I think it's just about working within their own country, working that means getting people employed, having a decent standard of living, that kind of thing. Just be wary of outside influences and outside actors. Yeah, I think it's It's an interesting idea. It's not one that would it definitely wouldn't work in the modern world, because we do need other countries for trade. Another, I couldn't figure out what I wrote here when I said outsourcing and low-ish for workers. I think I meant low-ish standards maybe for workers in other countries. I mean, the EU has like a baseline for working standards, but it's not the highest. And obviously, we've seen a decent amount of outsourcing of, I think, British products and jobs, etc., from the UK, which is a left-wing argument as well, right? That we've seen car manufacturing, I think, move to countries like Slovakia, which has lower wages and lower standards than the UK. So this is another left wing argument, I think, that people have made, right?
Yeah, and kind of going back to the point where you just mentioned about UK based businesses moving to other countries. Yeah, going back similar to kind of like a big argument was that wages in the UK are higher, so as a result, you pay for the premium of it being UK made. You can look at cars or like produce as well. So when it gets outsourced to those countries, like Slovakia and predominantly like Eastern Europe and Southern Eastern Europe, is that because the wages are less, it makes so much sense for big businesses to go, well, why don't I just outsource it? Because for the price I'll pay for my workers, I can pay in another country for workers and shipping and make more money. So I guess yeah, the European Union does have that like that base standard, but it's not. It can be outsourced.
Yeah, the thing is, though, to counter that kind of argument is we have seen a lot of business come to the UK as a result of being the EU. In the EU, London became the financial center of Europe. That wouldn't have happened without a system like the EU, because each other country would have had their own kind of financial services to an extent. Large financial centers. Like they do in Dublin, Frankfurt, etc. But these would have been far stronger, I think, and the city of London would have been far weaker. And stuff like outsourcing, we had a lot of Japanese car manufacturers, set up shop within the UK. So we might have lost certain industries or certain factories because of joining the EU. They might have joined a EU member with lower standards or lower wages, but we did actually get in a lot of companies as well. Despite us having higher standards, for whatever reason, we had Nissan, Honda, and many other Japanese brands that chose the UK over other countries, which I always found a bit interesting and a bit strange, because some of these factories and stuff, they need a certain level of expertise, people to come in. So I guess it kind of does make sense for them to move to certain areas which may have those expertise. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I guess when you originally think about it, it's like, oh, it's very surprising that Japanese car companies would choose the UK. But then I guess historically the UK has like a very rich car and racing history, like, and it still does today. We're obviously not far from us. We've got Silverstone, and a lot of teams are based there. And I think there's a lot of parts of the UK that had massive manufacturing businesses in car making, which sadly those brands have kind of died off a bit, or they've become quite luxury brands. But yeah, that there is that manufacturing skill in the car industry that the UK does have. And I guess when you think about it, like, it does make sense for Japanese car manufacturers to put their manufacturing in the UK, because obviously Japan focuses a lot on finance and tech as well. So I guess manufacturing isn't the top of their priority. So it makes sense to find that, like in Sunderland and places that do have that history of car manufacturing, they've got the facility, they've got the capabilities, people know what to do. So it does make sense to bring that business here, and being part of the European Union does make that so much easier to negotiate those deals and be protected as well by the European Union. But hopefully we can kind of keep the manufacturing, because British people love their cars,
It's
they
gone,
love
bro.
their racing.
It's gone, bro. Like, I hate to break it to you, but it's kind of gone. I think the
Well,
Japanese
yeah,
car
but
makers they're either gonna try and increase kind of what they make here, or they're just gonna go. I can just see them
yeah,
going at some point.
yeah, especially to places like Germany that have massive facilities for car manufacturing, and I wouldn't be surprised. But it's a shame, because yeah, British people love cars and racing and you know stuff like that. So it'd be nice to keep that. But yeah, it's a dying industry, unfortunately.
starting in the UK. I think it'll do well in other countries.
Mm.
We'll go on to another kind of left wing idea, which is that it kind of stops nationalisation and state aid. So, as far as I know of, the EU rules around state aid are the same or similar to the WTO rules around state aid. So, that's not the best argument I've heard from certain people, and it stops nationalisation. We still have the NHS, and if I'm not wrong, there is a French energy company that's 50 or 49% owned by the French government. We've also seen EU states own or have shares in train companies that are so strong that they have train businesses in the UK, and they charge us more in the UK, so then they could take some of that money and give it back to their respective governments. I think Momentum did a really good video on it in 2017, I believe. I don't know if you've seen it, Alice. It was hilarious and painfully accurate. But we pay more for trains in this country so that certain businesses can make a lot of money and certain EU nations can make profit off us, because why not? Because we let them.
Yeah, and I don't think I've seen the video, but I know the point you're making about they charge more here and then cut the cost elsewhere. And it's like, it's the fact that, like, I don't really get the train very often, but when I do, I always think, like, what? It's an awful
Mate.
service. You're not guaranteed a seat. It's probably going to be late. It's going to stop off loads, and it's just going to be an unpleasant journey from start to finish. And the prices are so bad. And like, I went to, when I was in Latvia, I took a train from Riga to Saukralis, I think it's called, by the sea, and it's about a 45-minute train, and I think it cost me about £6 for a return. And it was such a nice, the train was nice, a lot of space, the windows would open, and it was, really hot sunny day, but the breeze was coming through, and the chairs were nice, had loads of space, and I was like, £6. This trip in England would probably cost me £50. Like,
And you ain't getting a
so
seat,
bad.
and you have to deal with
No,
some
I've got-
douchebags on the train.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to stand the whole way, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, and it's just gonna be a horrendous trip. And it's just crazy that people are so willing to like let that happen, I guess. And yeah, and kind of going back to the point on, I guess, state aid, not too similar, but I think the UK has a very negative outlook on foreign aid in as well. So I think it's almost like we go, why don't we help British people? And we go, okay, well, let's feed hungry kids. No, not like that. And it's like, what do you want people? We're trying to help British kids, and now you're not liking it. Pick
Yeah,
one.
that's a classic. I love that so much. He's like, no, not like that. It's like, why don't you just protest peacefully like Colin Kaepernick did when he took a knee? He's like, no, you can't do that. That's sports. You can't. It's sports, and not politics. It's sports. And yeah, I think that yeah, I just don't agree with those arguments. I think the EU being pro austerity is a strong argument, especially after what happened with Greece. Greece, a country that was already a bit financially unstable before they joined the EU. I think the treatment from of Greece by the EU Central Bank and also the IMF was really bad. But we'll stick with kind of the EU stance on it, which was, they didn't bail out Greece; they bailed out, bankers who lent money to Greece, which they shouldn't have done. They bailed them out of risky loans, really, and it's the Greek taxpayer who has to pay for it. So, it's going to be it's going to be a very tough time for anyone to defend what the EU did to Greece. But yeah, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think even the most ardent of European Union supporters can't really justify how horrific the austerity in Greece was, and I think it's sad to see because, I guess from the UK, like Greece is such a popular destination for a lot of people, and there's a lot of problems, and the fact that EU implemented such harsh austerity measures, not on the people that really caused those problems, but that's the problem. It's always the taxpayer. It's always your normal person who just wants to work his 9 to 5, or is a waiter at a restaurant, or works in the corner shop. They're the one that has to foot the bill. And yeah, the European Union didn't do anything to help itself, and Greece was such a horrible situation, and still quite sad to see now that obviously they're still trying to recover from that.
Yeah. Mass forced privatization, stuff like that. I mean, some of it was the IMF, but the IMF are another choke institution that push austerity. But the thing is, people in the UK can complain, but same Tory government that implemented massive amounts of austerity in the UK post the 2010 election. So I'm not going to hear it from any Tory supporters who are like, oh, but look what Greece did. Look what the EU did to Greece. Are like, mate, you would love to have done the same thing. Get out of here.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want to listen to them on austerity, considering the fact that you know community centres around where we are closing,
It's bad.
uh, and there's just nothing. And I think people are so used to it that the government could just make everything so much worse, and they would just go, oh, okay, you know, like almost like Stockholm syndrome. They love the one that hurts them the most, and
Mm.
yeah, I wouldn't take anything austerity related from a Tory supporter, considering how much pain their government has inflicted on the people of this country.
So the final kind of thing that I want to talk about is immigration. We spoke about with foreigners, but I think kind of left wing perspective. I watched an old clip of Andy Burnham giving a speech where he talks about immigration causing wage suppression and all this stuff. I'm going to cover it in a video at some point. And I was like, Andy, mate, if you are so worried about wage suppression, why don't you push the government to increase wages? Huh?
Yeah,
Like,
it's like
come on,
here's this
Andy.
great idea, increase wages.
Like, if
I
you're
think
scared,
people,
like EU workers are pushing down wages, which I think the amount people said was about between 1% and 3%, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. And the classic argument that by employing lower paid staff, you keep prices down, which isn't always true because most of the time it's the boss man making a lot of money. Well, I suppose in this modern world we can say the boss woman potentially making the money from that, and it's not to keep prices down. But now we've seen in the UK there's mass amounts of vacancies from unskilled and lower skilled and higher skilled jobs, managers, head chefs, and that we can't fill the roles there, and it takes a long time to become a good front of house team member. Leading a team of waiters or waitresses is really difficult. So the arguments that people made, especially Andy Burnham, I'm ashamed of you, bro. Like when I saw that speech, I was like, Andy, what are you doing? Like honestly, and a lot of left wingers make this argument that wage suppression is an issue. Right wingers pretend to care about it, but they really don't. But here's a big one for you, Andy. Just try and raise wages to a living wage, and then you'll see those jobs being done by people here. Come on, mate.
yeah, I'd agree. And it's like it's almost like a cop out of well, it's the foreigners that are making everything, that are decreasing like how much we can pay. It's like no, but you have the ability to put that pressure on to wage rate, raise wages, and it's like it's not a hard, people, oh, they're getting £10 an hour for flipping burgers. It's like, but people don't realize how much money gets, you invest in people, they invest back.
Yeah.
I guess it's I think it's quite a Keynesian
I mean, it
idea.
makes it makes sense though, and it's bottom up economics. You give people at the lower end money. That's one of the main arguments behind UBI, isn't it? You give poorer people money, and they'll spend it in the economy. Like, there's a reason why, like, certain more kind of not even luxury items, but nicer items don't get bought when there's a recession. People don't have money for it, and that impacts,
Yeah.
manufacturing and stuff like that. If you can't have money for manufactured goods, that creates more problems in the chain. People within manufacturing lose their jobs, and those products can't get made. It's not a hard one to figure out, and I don't understand why people like act so dumb over it, especially someone like Andy Burnham who became a bit of a northern hero during the pandemic. And I saw that speech, I was like, Andy, all my respect's gone for you, pal. Like it's gone real quick because that was a fraudulent
Yeah.
argument using right wing talking points, and to bash immigrants as well. Come on, mate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I find with kind of like a universal basic income, and I know there's like when they had talks of like giving people like 500 quid, like as like I guess similar to like the stimulus checks in America. Like if you give your average kind of working class person 500 quid, they're not going to think, right, I'm going to invest that, I'm going to save that. They're probably
Cryptos.
going to get themselves a takeaway, go to the local pub, have a load of drinks, and probably buy themselves like a new fridge. Like they're going to spend probably every penny of that and probably more. They'll go buy new clothes for them and their kids, or they'll go out to restaurants and treat themselves to a nice little meal, or like a nice date night with a partner. Like they're gonna put that money straight back into the economy. Like you give me 500 quid, I'm not gonna go, okay, well, here's £500, I can keep that and sit on it and get my 0.01% interest a year. Like I'm just gonna go, oh, I got 500 quid
Yeah.
here, right? Okay, I might upgrade the PC, I might buy myself a new monitor, headset. Like I'm gonna put that money straight back in. Like I guess it's quite a odd idea that we're so against that. But
And the other thing is, like, even if you use that money to pay your rent or mortgage, someone might need that money. Otherwise, they might end up being homeless, and that comes with a massive cost as well. It comes to a cost of them obviously losing their home is very traumatic. Maybe a cost to their family, a cost to the council because then the council might have to give them social housing. They've already done studies in other countries where homelessness actually costs more than giving someone a place to live because of the cost
yeah,
of crime and health problems and other stuff like that. So it's just ridiculous, like all this stuff like that stems from like wage suppression and not wanting to give people a living wage. Like, it's not hard to figure out, especially you, Andy Burnham, so-called lefty. Like, I was so embarrassed when I watched that video. It's like, dude, I actually liked you and you had to ruin it. Like, past you in 2016 has ruined current you. And the thing is, I reckon he still has those views because he's the one saying the red wall seats would have been safe under me. Like, unless you think just because you're from I think he's from Liverpool or Manchester, wherever he's from, it doesn't mean Northerners are going to vote for you, bud. Unless you're going to make those sort of right-wing talking point arguments, which if you did, you would have hemorrhaged votes in the South. And when I do that video, I will talk about that, where if you were going to push, a left-wing kind of Brexit or just Brexit in general with the Labour Party, you would have absolutely hemorrhaged votes to the Lib Dems and the Greens. Like, that's a suicide strategy on its own.
yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
You're not Bernie Sanders, pal. You can't say, I would have won in 2019. Don't do it. There's only one man who can make that argument. That's Bernie Sanders in America. You can't make that argument, buddy. But yeah, we've kind of gone off topic a bit, but I feel like it's kind of relevant to an extent. Is there any more thing you want more? Sorry, is there anything more you want to add, Ellis?
No, I think that covers about everything. Hopefully that kind of helps you out a bit. Cinderella, obviously quite a long bit we kind of spoke about, but hopefully that kind of gives some ideas as to, why people are anti-EU and hopefully you can kind of make you think about, those ideas that people don't like the EU and I guess the neglect of the education system and kind of all the things we've gone over. So hopefully that kind of makes some sense. But
I think it's a really good question, and I think there was a lot to talk about. So I think it's fair that we went into depth on this one because there are a lot of reasons why people like the EU. Most of them very stupid, apart from maybe some of the voting stuff and the EU being pro austerity. Like, I'll give you those. I'll happily give you those. But the rest of it, I'm like, I'm not sure. The idea that foreigners are making decisions on our behalf, well, you could argue that in Scotland that it's English people making the most of the decisions, therefore they want independence. Or you can even argue if you live in the north of England or wherever, those damn Southerners are making decisions on our behalf, we don't like it. It's a very reductionist argument, and you'll get to a point where you'll get mad at your local council because they're making decisions you don't like, and you just want to be your house making decisions, or just you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.